Hi, everyone. It's Miss Akvari in the library. And today I was thinking a little bit about spring and how we just changed to this new season. Spring is a time for new things. We're starting a new quarter. We're starting to see new growth in nature outside. And so I have some new books that I want to share with you. These are books that have never really been checked out. We just got them in this week. And along with that, I was thinking about the advisory lesson that you started yesterday and will continue into next week, which is about identity. And the beautiful thing about studying identity is it's a powerful way to learn about ourselves, so the parts of us that make us who we are, as well as learning about other people. And another way that that can be powerful is it can connect us not just to other people, but to the stories that we see, maybe on TV or in movies, or that we read in the library. And so I want us to think about, as we're listening to me talk about these new books, what are ways that these books are a mirror for you and reflect back parts of your identity and parts of your life. And then maybe along with that are what are ways that these books may be a window for you. So they show you something new. The other interesting thing is that books that may be a mirror for me might be a window for somebody else. So books that show me parts of my identity might be a way for someone else to learn something new about me or people like me. So here are some books that I wanted to share with you. So the first book I wanted to share is called A First Time for Everything. And so the author Dan Santat is an illustrator, has illustrated a lot of different things over the years. And this is his first kind of solo book where he's writing about his life, but he is doing all the illustrations here as well. And some interesting things about Dan is he was born in New York, but grew up in California, and his parents are from Thailand. So he's a Thai American, and that plays into his experience and a lot of the things that he experienced in school. The other things that a lot of us probably can relate to in this book is Dan is in junior high when this book starts, and he has a lot of things that kind of separate him from his classmates, make him feel awkward, uncomfortable, embarrassed. He has to have his first time of public speaking in front of a bunch of kids from his school. He has his first big experience away from home. He travels with a group to learn in Europe. And he is working on making friendships and trying to navigate like the social aspects of his junior high life. So a lot of those are probably things we can relate to. So there are probably some ways that book can be a window or a mirror for you. And if you like graphic novels, this is for sure a great choice. His art style is really wonderful. The next book I wanted to talk about is called The Lost Year by Catherine Marsh. What's interesting about The Lost Year is it's actually set in two different time periods. So it's set right now in the United States. It's also set back in the 1930s in Ukraine. And so we probably have heard about the Ukraine and the conflict with Russia, the war that's going on between those two countries. And in the 1930s, you probably also know that's when World War II was getting started. And there was a lot of famine and difficulty and some really awful things that happened to people in the Ukraine that were caused by people in or the government in the Soviet Union. And so in this book, The Lost Year, the main character is living now. His father is away as a journalist covering other stories in the world. The family is locked down because of COVID, which is something we can probably all relate to. And their great grandmother comes to stay, and he starts to learn about her life when she was his age and the difficulty she and her family had in the Ukraine at that time. So if you like historical fiction, if you're just kind of curious what it was that people in Ukraine went through in the 1930s, or if you just kind of like to hear about his experience dealing with COVID, because you can probably relate to that, you'll probably like reading The Lost Year. The next book I wanted to tell you about is really unique. This book is called Anyana Del Mar Jumps In, and you can see Anyana on the cover here. You can see the ocean behind her. You can maybe even see some dolphins swimming, and that's because Anyana lives in Galveston, Texas, which is on the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. Her family is from the Dominican Republic originally. Her parents speak Spanish a lot of times in the home. Anyana speaks Spanish with her family, and Anyana is a swimmer. So she's always loved the water. She is a really good competitive swimmer. It's really an important part of her identity and what makes her who she is. The only thing is, she and her dad are keeping her swimming abilities secret from her mom, and there's a reason for that. So there's some secrets going on in her family, which can be kind of tricky. The other thing that makes this book really unique is it's a book in verse. Okay, so you know that probably means it looks like poems, but look at how the author also kind of makes shapes out of her words sometimes, which I think is really cool. So you can see it made like a teardrop, or in this case, it's talking about the hurricane, and you can see it's kind of in waves like a storm would be. She's got another one where she talks about ocean and the moon, and you can see it's a crescent moon shape. So if you like novels in verse, if you have any connections to swimming, if you have connections to maybe speaking Spanish at home, all of that might resonate with you to read this book, or maybe a reason you want to learn more about this book. The other thing that Anyana suffers from as the book goes on is she starts to have pain in her joints, really swollen, stiff joints, her knees, her ankles, her shoulders, and it gets in the way of her swimming. She has arthritis, and she needs to come to terms with that. The last book I want to talk with you about is called Black Flowers Bloom, Where the Black Flowers Bloom. And this is a fantasy novel. In this book, Asha, the main character you see on the cover, she lives in a fictional kingdom that is called Alkebulan. And there is an evil sorcerer there who's spreading darkness. The person who has raised Asha has just passed away. And so now Asha has to be on this mission to save her kingdom. And as Asha goes through this mission, she starts to discover some powers that she has. And if you like fantasy books where the world is made up, or where a character is kind of struggling against evil, this would be an interesting book for you to read. You may be asking yourself, how can I relate to, how can a book that's made up, a fantasy book and a character with magical powers, relate to me? How can that be a reflection book for me? But we all have things, obstacles that we face. We all have gifts that we have that we can learn to develop and add to. So maybe this book doesn't literally show us something we can relate to, but maybe in a bigger way, there are some bigger ideas that we can relate to in this. So I hope you enjoyed learning about some of these new books in our library. I hope you had a chance to think about how these books might relate to your identity or those of the identities around you. And I hope you come in and check out a great book sometime soon.